Tanya is here today. This is my daughter. And I might as well tell you about Tanya. Tanya was adopted from Korea with their little brother Boo, and their brother and sister, naturally, biologically, brother and sister. And Boo arrived on his birthday at the age of 1 year old, and she was 2.5. Prior to leaving Korea, they were very violently immunized to meet immigration standard. Something that we would have objected to if we could afford it, but we couldn't fight it. So we let it happen. And consequently, when they arrived in the United States, not only they had to sustain the emotional trauma of the separation with their mother, and then being with a foster mother for a while, and then they had the chemical trauma of the massive vaccination that they went under. Hi, Eli. Hi, how are you? It's okay, we just started. Don't feel bad. Have a seat. And then they obviously went through the trauma of a change of lifestyle, a different culture, different food, different language. So you can imagine how much their body and their nervous system was traumatized. And what's interesting is very quickly they start to manifest a whole array of symptoms and physical expression. And obviously from a medical perspective, all those things could have been medicated and suppressed and repressed in their body, but having the understanding that we have in chiropractic, we allow those symptoms to come out. To give you some example, every time that we would move to a different place, for the weekend for example, if I went to visit my brother-in-law, Boo would develop stye on his eyelid that would come virtually within hours, and then they would come to a head and pus would come out. And in one of the reports from the adoption agency, it always mentioned that at night he was very fussy while being changed, and he would play with his ears. So we saw that when he played with his ears and he fussed when we changed him, nothing was unusual. But what took place is that after a period of about 1.5 months of being with us, he one night started crying uncontrollably. And he cried in a manner that was so deep that he wanted to do something for the child. And at the time he had long Korean hair that covered his ears up down to here. So I just felt compelled. He was sitting at the counter at one of those chairs that you lock up on the counter. And I felt compelled to touch his face. And when I touched his face, I brushed his hair and the ear became exposed. And the ear had coiled out of its shell like a snail and was hanging out of the ear. And it was an incredible sight. And my first reaction was to pull back and look at this thing. And it was like, I have a picture someplace, I think, of the ear. I know this is a different one, this is crystal. In the ear, but anyhow, the ear has different tubes, and all those things were just, the tympanic membrane, everything was hanging out. And it was the grossest thing. And my entire being locked immediately in fear by looking at this. I just focused on this thing, and I went, oh my God. And then I immediately came back to center and retracted into the center of myself, into all of the things that I had learned in chiropractic school about the wisdom of the body, the innate intelligence of the body. And rather than focusing on the ear, I came back to trusting that part of myself that I knew was in connection with the wisdom of life. And as soon as I did this, I saw something completely different on his face. I saw that every time he was crying, his face was contracting, and the temporalis muscle, which is the muscle of the scalp here, and the masseter muscle were contracting in unison, creating pressure towards the ear. And I realized, I got an insight into what was going on. I realized that the crying, putting pressure, was increasing pressure, and eventually that whatever was there was going to burst and come out. Well, he kept crying for about 1.5 hours or so, and then suddenly there was a rupture of the bulging that was out, and projectile pus. And pus came out. And the only thing that I did is brush his face like this, and every time I would brush his face upward towards the ear, more pus would come out, and it was like a greenish, stench, unbelievable stench came out of it. Within 48 hours, the ear had retracted to normal. There is no hearing loss. The message that I got from this, and the understanding that I got from this, is that, you know, there is no situation that I think could have been worse in an ear infection. And yet the body was able to handle it, recover, and there is no hearing loss. Now, what would have happened if I had given Tylenol to that child? And as a result, the pain would have subsided, and he would no longer have cried, and the contraction of those muscles would have not pushed the pus and caused the bursting. What would have happened if I had taken the kid to the hospital? They would have lanced it, shot him full of antibiotic, and at the time, because the child was only a month and a half in our custody, more likely we would have lost custody of the child because the hospital behavior would have been, well, this is inhuman what you did, this is child abuse, and the state of Pennsylvania could have taken the children from us. And a lot of people may think, well, yes, that was cruel to let a child cry and not give him painkiller. But then I look at the other side of the story of all of the children that have come to me over the years because their parents have heard that chiropractic may help them with chronic ear infection. And when I take the history of those kids, I find out that every 3 to 4 months they have an ear infection, that they have been on antibiotic for like 1.5 years, 2 years, sometimes 3 years, and the parents are so disgusted to have to keep giving those kids antibiotics that they finally end up here. Most of those kids have had tubes implanted in their ears that the body pushed out and rejected only for the physician to put it back. And when the body would keep pushing it back, the physician would make a tube, which is called a T-shaped tube, which is inserted so that even if the body tried to expel it, it can't be expelled. It has to be removed basically through a minor form of surgery. And I say, is this human? I mean, is this human behavior? To destroy the health of the children continually by giving them antibiotic, destroy their immune system, and consequently more likely buy them either cancer, leukemia, any kind of immune deficiency disease that a person can buy themselves because of prolonged use of antibiotics. Okay? So I think we have to look at the fact that even though in the instance of what happened, it looked like it was brutal behavior not to give the child painkiller. But at 1 year old, you'll be surprised, he has no recollection of it. Okay? At the time, it was what, 1.5 hours of pain, or 2 hours of pain, or 3 hours of pain, to get to a point where his body resolved the ear infection. He never had another one since.